Hey guys, welcome back. This is the second part to my SL1 New Game Plus 7 Fresh Start Challenge. There was some mild interest expressed in the first video for me to continue with the challenge for a bit, so I'll make a couple more videos. I think the ultimate goal will be getting the Lord Vessel, and that's because once I get the Lord Vessel, I basically have access to almost all upgrades that I could possibly get. And once I get that, basically this is a normal New Game Plus 7 SL1 challenge. It's been done before. There's plenty of videos. Emerald has done it, or Emarl. I hope I didn't butcher the name. But there's also some Japanese ones and a couple of other ones out there for people fighting bosses at SL1 New Game Plus 7. So the point of this challenge again was to face the difficulty of New Game Plus 7 head on instead of mitigating a lot of it by starting out with a bunch of high-powered, fully upgraded gear from the previous playthrough. So you see me now, I'm taking on Lotric. I could have easily kicked him off, but since you guys like to see me actually show how difficult some of the stuff is, I'm going to go ahead and take him on straight up. So there's going to be quite a bit of me running around in this video. I have some upgrading to do, I have some farming to do, and I need to grab a few items. So I will be fast forwarding pretty much every area that I've already been through, just so it doesn't drag out the length of the video to be excessively long, especially when there's not really any substance in it. So just expect that. As you can see, Lotric has quite a bit of hit points, and basically one solid hit and I would die. You're going to see me get a partial parry here shortly, and it takes about half my health, even though I partial parried it. So he's no joke. Normally I don't use the Ring of Fap because it's one of those things I kind of weaned myself off of and never went back to. But because I don't have the Havel's ring, it's the only real ring I'm going to be able to use where I can carry more weight. And so it's kind of my only option. It's a solid ring choice, but my biggest complaint is that it locks up a ring slot. And once people put it on, they usually don't want to take it off because it'll break. So I just kind of got used to not even doing it. And then once I get used to it, it just kind of became pointless for me. In fact, the vitality portion of it really isn't going to help me too much. But the stamina portion will definitely help me because I can be able to swing my weapon probably one more time and get an extra dodge in. So that'll be very helpful. So I'm on my way back to the catacombs to do something I should have done in the first video. And that is go ahead and upgrade my reinforced club to fire. And the way that works is on the way down to Vamos, there is one green shard. And had I had the souls, I could have easily upgraded my reinforced club to fire. And then I could have left like I did and gated out of there. Gated being obviously an EverQuest term. But then after that, all I would have had to do was buy the weapon smith box. And after that, I could have finished upgrading it all the way to +5 without having to go to Vamos again. So I could have saved myself the trip, but I didn't have enough souls and I didn't want to waste time farming for them. That was why I killed Petrus and the Crestfallen Warrior. Because those guys gave a pretty good chunk of souls, but it wasn't enough. So I could have farmed some souls earlier, made my life easy, but I chose to not do it, and now I have to go back and do this. So you're seeing me summon Paladin Leroy, and which is something I don't often do. In fact, this might be one of the very few times I've ever summoned this guy. And the reason being, these bone wheel skeletons will eat me alive, so I thought it might be a good idea to summon Leroy and see if he might do some of the work for me. And I want you guys to see how much damage this guy does. It's pretty ridiculous. Because he's an NPC and it's New Game Plus 7, he gets overpowered. So he does some insane damage with his weapon and his Wrath of God. So I'm trying to let him take out as much as he can before I run there. It doesn't always work. I've tried it before and his AI sometimes takes off in the other direction. So I'm just standing here trying to get the attention of the enemies. And you can see how the AI works. Even though he's standing right there, they're still going after me. And as you saw, he did an insane amount of damage to those guys. But right now, he's obviously taking off. There's still some bone wheels around. Like he was going to come back to that guy, and I guess he just decided to give up. I don't know what he sees down there, if it's more bone wheels or if it's the Black Knight that he can see up there. But at any rate, I realized that he did all he was going to do, and now I have to make a run for it. And there was another one right there I didn't see. So I make a very rookie mistake here. Since I don't summon very often, I forgot that you can't quit out the game, because that was my plan. And you'll see very shortly I realized, oops. So now I'm stuck in here with a couple bone wheel skeletons, and I don't want to have to run back. So I'm trying to react quickly. I realize now I have to somehow equip the black crystal into my slot and then use it real fast, and then hopefully quit out. It was a little nerve-wracking because I didn't want to die. I did not want to have to run down here again. So now I'm going to get rid of Leroy, which immediately allows me to quit the game back out. And as you can see, it was just in time. So you're going to hear a little music here. For some reason, the sound got jacked up when I came back in the game. So there's a couple minutes of video where I don't have actually game music. So instead of just hearing my voice kind of on silence, I decided to throw a little bit of music in the background. Just something. So it's not my voice with nothing else. So I got quite a bit of responses to my first video. In fact, I had a very warm welcome, which I appreciate, guys. I knew that there was some people that have been waiting for me to make videos, but I guess I didn't realize there was that many people that were going to be happy about it. So with all those responses, I really just don't have the time to respond to everybody personally. I never have had the time before, and it's even worse now with my schedule. But I can respond to some of the more popular questions and comment on some of the things people are asking for. And then I'll do that and kind of talk about the video in between as we go. So the biggest question I keep getting is, am I ever going to finish my one-shot challenge? The answer, sadly for you guys, is no. The reason being, the one-shot challenge was never designed to be beat. I never thought I could finish the game. The whole point was just a point system to see how far somebody could get and who could take the better path, make the better choices, and end up with the most points. But once I beat Artorias and gained access to Darkbead, it basically made the rest of the playthrough completely possible, which meant I would have been able to get probably the maximum points possible, and I just kind of lost interest in it. So I kind of just grew bored of it, and then I got burnt out of Dark Souls again, and took a break, and just never got back to it. So you're seeing me here. I'm trying to get into hyper mode because I want to farm some ghosts, because I've decided at this point I want to get a ghost blade. And actually it's a jagged ghost blade. I misspoke in the first video when I was talking about twinkling titanite weapons. The jagged ghost blade is the one that's like a curved sword, and they drop from the normal ghosts, and the ghost blade is actually a dagger, and it drops from the banshees, and it's much harder to farm because there's only a couple banshees on the level. The reason I'm getting it is because I can't fight Quelaag with a fire reinforced club, because she's immune to fire damage, so it would be pointless to use it. And I didn't want to go grab the 3 pine resins from Undead Berg and then risk dying a couple times fighting her and running out of pine resins and having to farm it. So efficiency wise, it seemed the best for me to just go try to get the ghost blade, which I could upgrade very easily. It's not all that rare of a weapon, but sometimes it does take a few trips through New Londo killing ghosts in order to get it. You saw me burning through humanities, and if you're wondering why, it's to get my item find up. Since I don't have access to the gold serpent ring, the only way to maximize your item find is to get your humanity to 10. And actually, you get most of that on the first humanity. The difference between 2 and 9 is actually less than the difference between no humanity and 1 humanity. So you see, I got lucky and got a drop on the first one. And as you can see, it's actually a jagged ghost blade. That was an insane amount of luck. You guys have made comments on some of my previous videos before about how lucky I am with Black Knight weapons. That was probably the luckiest drop I ever got. Because it's New Game Plus 7 and I'm running around with a plus 5 weapon, it would have taken quite a bit of work for me to farm killing all the ghosts, but I was able to do it on the first shot. So with that out of the way, I'm going to head down to Blighttown now, and pretty much the rest of this video is going to be taking place down there, doing all that I can do. Because I didn't go to Blighttown and get the key to open up the New Londo gate, I have to go to Blighttown back through the Valley of Drakes. But once I do that and get the key, I won't ever have to go through that again. So continuing on with some responses. Another thing I saw a lot about was my comment about the gargoyles in the 30 seconds. That was my bad. I was confusing it with the man-eaters. I was thinking at the time that no matter what, after a set amount of time, the second gargoyle comes out. And I still think that might be true, but I just did a test today, and I sat there for a minute dodging the first gargoyle, and the second one never showed up. So either it's beyond 1 minute or it actually does not happen. I just know that I've seen the other one come out at less and at more than 50% hit point damage to the first. So I think I was just getting it confused with Demon Souls and the Man-Eaters, because that's how the Man-Eaters work. The second one comes out regardless by a certain amount of time. I'm taking out these ints because I'm hoping to get at least one purple moss, because I know that I'm going to Blighttown. It would be convenient for me to have one purple moss for getting rid of poison on my way from the bonfire to Quelaag. Unfortunately, I didn't get one, so it's just something else I'm going to have to deal with. So let's see, what else do I got on my notes here? Cheat engine and how it kind of works. I'm going to put this in the description. By the time this video is out, I may not have it completely ready yet because I want to get the video out first. But let me give you the quick rundown. And I don't want to sound like I'm a hacker or I know what's going on. I just know enough about things like this to where I can kind of work my way through it. But I don't necessarily understand exactly how everything works. Basically, Cheat Engine is a program that allows you to look at what's loaded into the RAM, the random access memory. So basically what you do is you load up your game, and in this case it would be Dark Souls, and then it's located in the RAM memory. And then Cheat Engine is able to access that program via the RAM memory, and it shows you the data actually in hex code format. And once you figure out, that's the hard part, figuring it out. Other people do that, not me. Once people figure out what some of the code relates to in the game, you can change that code and change the game. Now, that's a lot more difficult than it sounds. But point being, there is a way to find out the code in the game that relates to the new game value. So all you really have to do in Cheat Engine is you load it up after you start Dark Souls, and you find the value that to change for the new game version or the new game iteration, and you change it, and it's really that simple. So me, I didn't really know what the pointer values is what they call them, what it was for new game. So I downloaded a script, which is something somebody else already created that automatically points to it, and you basically just kind of click on it, and there's a checkbox, and then there's a value to change from 0 to 7, and so that's all I really did. However, there's a trick to it, and you probably didn't notice in the first video. You can't actually start the game in New Game Plus 7 from the very beginning, because if you do, you won't get the Estus Flask from Oscar. So what I actually had to do was start the game in regular New Game, make it to Oscar real quick, wait for the Estus Flask to show up, then I quit out of the game, loaded it back up, turned on New Game Plus 7, then quit right back out again to save that value, and then I loaded it up and continued on. I just edited the video to make it look like that didn't happen. So for anyone that wants to do this, very important, don't change your New Game Plus 7 value until after you get the Estus Flask, or you will not get it. So because I don't want to promote any sort of cheating in Dark Souls, I'm using it, obviously, not to cheat per se, but to actually make the game harder. But the script that I have has a bunch of other stuff in it, and I don't want to promote doing that. I mean, if people really want to do it, they can figure it out on their own. I don't want to be the one handing it to them. So the script that I have has everything deleted but the new game value, because that doesn't really affect other people. So the order you do it does make a difference. I would recommend not making changes to the value while you're playing, because there's been times where I've changed the value and then tabbed it back into the game and seen that the graphics are all jacked up. So my recommendation would be, like I said, play it normally until you get to Oscar and get the Estus Flask. Immediately quit out, load up Cheat Engine, go into the script and change the value, then start up Dark Souls right away. And then as soon as the game starts, you are officially in New Game Plus 7. Then I would quit out again, which would save that value into your save file, then close Cheat Engine, and then start the game back up and play normally. That way you're only using Cheat Engine long enough to change the value, and you're not actually trying to play the game with it live, which could cause you other problems. So I'm taking on Mildred here. I was hoping I was going to make it to the bonfire before she invaded. I forgot that that doesn't happen. You can't possibly do it. She always invades if you're human before you can make it. And as you just saw, she killed me. Part of the reason is because I was trying to fight a bit defensively because I did not want to die. And because of that reason, I ended up dying. My natural instinct is to play very aggressively. And I let a little bit of paranoia slip in, and I ended up trying to fight defensively, and it got me killed. So even though I got my bloodstain back and I have the bonfire lit, I am not going to let her get away with it, and I will definitely fight her again. Now moving on to more responses. People have been asking about my thoughts on Dark Souls 2. I will cover that, but I'm going to cover that in the next video probably. I don't have all my thoughts together, but I have seen the footage and it looks promising, but I don't want to get too excited yet because it's so early. Who knows what can change. I know a lot of people like to make speculation, and I guess I do in my own way sometimes, but it's so early. I mean, there's so many things that can change. It's hard to really look at footage from that early of an alpha or beta, whatever version it's in. So another question I get asked a lot is, do I still PvP, and how do I think about PvP? That's kind of a can of worms. I used to PvP more often, but quite frankly, I just got bored of it. I think PvP can be fun, but I think the community as a whole makes it really unfun for a lot of people. And the reason is, and I know that some people are going to agree with me, disagree with me. Some people may agree with me. PvP is a touchy subject because we all have our own feelings about it. But the problem I have with PvP is I think it should be left alone and played as From intended it. And instead, people are trying to turn it into Street Fighter, and I think that that really ruins a lot of it. Because the problem is, this game is a one-player game. It's an RPG. And From went through all the trouble to give us an awesome storyline, even though if it's not handed to us. There's so much lore and detail in the game, and it's really designed to be focused on one player, with the multiplayer being sort of an add-on. And people want to turn it into something like Street Fighter, and I just don't think it's meant to be played like that. And when I say people like to turn it into Street Fighter, is they like to add all these arbitrary rules and give it, you know, the guise of honor, and you got to fight this way and you got to do this. And unfortunately, the only way that works is if everybody does it. And if you go onto the Dark Souls message boards very often, you can see every day all the whining and complaining and all the backstab complaints and lag stabs and everything you see every single day. It's non-stop for the last year and a half. And so I think it's pretty clear that no one is ever going to agree on what is the proper way to play. So I really think Dark Souls PvP would have been better had people just played it the way it was intended. And it's not balanced. This is never going to be balanced. It wasn't meant to be balanced. Like I said, this isn't Street Fighter. Street Fighter and Tekken and all other fighting games, most of the time they're designed with balance. Even though the characters are different, they're all designed to be somewhat balanced with each other. You're put into an arena, or I guess you could just say a fighting area or a level, whatever you may want to call it. And everything's balanced, you know. You can't heal, you can't stab people in the back when they're bowing to you. You can't do all that stuff. It's just like, you know, the bell rings and you fight, and you have the same amount of health as the other guy, and it turns into a game of skill. Dark Souls is not set up like that. There's level ranges and different weapons, and there's different magic, and there's just so many different variables. It's not meant to be a competitive game. I mean, people play it competitively, and don't get it the wrong message from what I'm saying. But the point is, it's not designed that way, and the more people try to make it that way, the more that they are going to be disappointed with it, because it's just not meant to be played that way. So a lot of the reason I stopped playing Dark Souls PvP is just because it kind of got boring to me. I hated the whole idea of dueling and doing all that stuff. I mean, I did fight clubs, I did red soapstone invasions, I did all that stuff, and I got bored of it really quick because I didn't want to fight with those rule sets. Dark Souls gives us this humongous world with all these variables that we can change, and people want to lock themselves into a little arena and play with a very strict set of rules, which I didn't find enjoyable. So most of my PvP videos are me running around in the actual areas of the game that are meant to be played like that. I like doing low-level PvP. I like doing forest invasions where I'm at a disadvantage. I mean, my challenge, the whole idea of me liking a challenge doesn't just exist in PvE. It exists in PvP too. I don't mind being fighting against people that are outnumbering me or using shitty tactics, or, you know, whatever people want to complain about. I kind of like it because it just gives me more reason to want to find a way to beat these people. So I get way more joy out of fighting 2 or 3 people in the forest when I'm outgunned, outnumbered, and all that, and coming away with a win, than I do fighting in an arena against one person who has the exact same level as me, and I know isn't going to try anything shiesty and all that kind of stuff. So again, that's the reason I don't PvP anymore. I just kind of grew bored of it. My feelings is, if I wanted to play a very competitive, strict rule system game like that, I would be playing Street Fighter 4 or whatever else I want to play. So another thing I've been asked a lot, especially in the private messages, is how did I get so good at Dark Souls? You know, what did I do to become as good as I am? Am I good at other games? You know, have I always been good at games, etc., etc.? So I kind of have a lot to say about that, and forgive me because I will probably ramble for a while. But right now I'm just farming stuff. I really don't have much better to do. So personally, I've been playing games for a long time. My first system was an Atari 2600 a long time ago. And throughout the years, I've had access to almost all systems, probably systems you've never even heard of. So I'm kind of a born and bred video game player from the golden age. And even though I'm older probably than a lot of my subscribers are, I still have not lost any of the skill. Instead of actually think I'm just as good or if not better than I used to be. And the reason is, so far, my hand-eye coordination and dexterity has not faltered, but it's my mindset that's changed. And I think it's the experience, like anything else. When you do something for a long time, you gain a certain level of experience, and there's no different with video games. Even though video games are different, there's still a lot of experience and knowledge that can pass along. And for me, it was always about the mindset. Me and my buddies back in probably, I don't know, elementary school through junior high and high school were always known as video game players. That was kind of our shtick. Everyone knew we were game players. Everyone knew we were good at games. So we used to take it upon ourselves to defeat the hardest games that everyone would complain about at school. Like, oh man, have you played Castlevania? That game's hella hard. I haven't beat it. So we would take it upon ourselves to go ahead and beat it. So my group of friends were the only ones I ever known who actually defeated Battletoads. We actually beat the original Ghosts and Goblins and all the Ghouls and Ghosts, even Super Ghouls and Ghosts. In fact, one of my probably greatest accomplishments as a kid was to defeat Ghouls and Ghosts, not Ghosts and Goblins, Ghouls and Ghosts in the arcade without actually using a continue. Meaning, I put my quarter in and I played through the entire game. And if you know Ghosts and Goblins and Ghouls and Ghosts, you know that you have to go through the entire game twice. And the hardest part is that you have to beat the final boss using the special weapon that you can obtain after beating the game once. So I made it through the entire game, both times through, without ever using a continue. I think I died once or twice, but I never had to use a continue, which was pretty damn amazing at the time, because that game in the arcade was known as a quarter sucker, something we used to call games that were extremely hard to play and meant to pretty much take all your hard-earned allowance money. So I was able to go through that one time. I remember doing it in the arcade, and I had quite a crowd around me. So as a young guy, it was kind of cool to go through that and see that other people were pretty much amazed at pulling off something like that. So my point was, I've always been really good at video games since I've been a young man. But something happened that really changed everything for me forever, and actually really just took me to the next level. And that's what I'll probably have to ramble about for a little bit, so again, forgive me. Back around the early 90s, we got Street Fighter 2 in our arcade. It was brand new, and me and my buddies always liked playing beat-em-up games, but Street Fighter 2 was something special. Even though at the time when it came out, we had no idea that it was going to become as large as it was, we still had a lot of fun with it. And for the first couple months we played, no one really knew much about the game. You got to remember the time period. The internet really wasn't around like it is today. The magazines, what were they? Electronic Gaming Monthly and what was the other one? GamePro. They hardly even had any coverage on Street Fighter 2. It was all kind of like local knowledge. It's kind of a cult classic when it first came out, because all the people at the arcades knew about the game, but you didn't really hear much about it in the media. And again, we didn't have access to the internet, so there really wasn't an underground online, Street Fighter community. I think there were some AOL channels devoted to it, but overall, pretty much everything we learned, we had to learn ourselves. So the first couple months that it came out, I played the shit out of it, and me and my buddies, again, were really good at it compared to the other players. But back then, being good at Street Fighter when it first came out wasn't about knowing combos and 2-in-1s and re-dizzies and knowing frame counts and all that shit. It was about being able to pull off moves, consistently. If you could just do a Dragon Punch when you wanted to, that was considered pretty damn good. And so back then, that kind of was like the level of, oh, you're really good at the game, because you can play Ken and Ryu, or I should say Ken and Ryu, and pull out Dragon Punches and Fireballs and Hurricane Kicks at will. That makes you good at the game. But all that changed one day. A couple months after it came out, a pair of Asian guys, and they were twins, twin brothers, and they played Guile in a way that I had never ever seen or thought of before. And we actually aptly called them the Guile twins. And they were doing things that we had no clue that could be done. And the biggest thing they were doing was pulling out flash kicks and sonic booms and combos, and at times that we didn't think it would be possible to do. And this all goes to the mindset thing I was talking about. And the reason being, those moves required 2 seconds of charging. They were charge moves. And so at the time, basically, my idea of doing a flash kick was I had to hold down for 2 seconds purposely before I wanted to do it. And if I wanted to do a sonic boom, I had to purposely hold back for 2 seconds to do it. And that's kind of all my brain thought about at the time. And I watched them play, and they seemed to be able to pull these moves out of the blue. They were jumping in at me doing like a fierce chop, fierce uppercut, and then a sonic boom would come out. And I really didn't understand how they were doing it, and it just never clicked to me for a while. I saw them smashing the button really quick, and I thought it had something to do with the speed. I thought there was a trick to it. And so they come on the weekends off and on and pretty much destroy all of us. The only guy that ever stood a chance was me, and even me, I was getting my ass kicked because they were... I mean, looking back, they weren't that good at Guile, but they played it in a way that opened my mind. And so for a couple of weeks after that, I kept playing around, trying to figure out what they were doing and how they did it, and I just couldn't figure it out. You know, looking back, it was extremely simple what they were doing, but at the time, again, you know, there was no internet to explain this. There was no facts. There was no a magazine that told you all the secrets. It was all kind of like you had to pay attention. So I watched them very closely. But one day, out of the blue, I was at work thinking about Street Fighter, what all young people do, think about video games while they're at work. And I sort of had an epiphany. It just hit me out of the blue. It just, like, all of a sudden, I understood what it was. I realized that the entire time, anything they were doing, they were always charging. That they were always holding back. Anytime they jumped forward at you, they'd immediately pull the joystick back so that they could pull a sonic boom out. And so even though on screen the character was moving forward, they were actually still charging. And once that clicked, it really, I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but that really changed my view of video games and how I thought about them. Because I realized I looked at video games kind of deeper into the mechanics of it. Without even thinking about it, I started thinking about mechanics in all games. So once that happened, my Guile went from barely mediocre to kicking everyone's ass literally overnight. Like, as soon as I thought about that, I went to the arcade after work, and I started doing everything I had seen them do, and I had this big ass grin on my face, and I told all my buddies about it, and that pretty much changed my Street Fighter playing forever. And from there, it just kind of snowballed into becoming the best Street Fighter player in the area. When those guys showed back up, not only could I handle fighting them, but I eventually became better than them. And so what does all this mean? What is the moral of the story? It's that even to this day, that epiphany still stands, and I still think about games in that way. And it's not even really intentional. It's not that I look at every game and I see numbers and all that. It's just that there are some things that translate over to other games. In fact, most games. And Dark Souls is no different, because Dark Souls has a lot of the same kind of mechanics that all action games, including fighting games, have. And what's funny is there's a lot of things that were inherent to Street Fighter back then that kind of transfer over to Dark Souls today. I started learning about 2-in-1 combos, which is basically doing one move and canceling it out into a special move right away. Something Capcom claims that they didn't intentionally do; it just showed up. I started learning about frame counts. I started learning about invincibility frames. How to cancel out other frames by holding the joystick in certain directions. So it just really opened my eyes. So when I came into Dark Souls, it was the same thing. Now, the first time I played through, I was so engrossed in the story, I didn't think too much about it. I was just enjoying the game. But after a couple playthroughs, I really started putting things together. And the thing about holding the joystick in certain directions even transfers to Dark Souls. EWGF did a video quite a while ago now, back in the beginning. So this is just an example about parry timing. And online, because of the lag, it was very difficult, if not impossible, to block the first attack, an R1 attack of a claymore or a great sword class weapon, and actually parry the second attack, because you just couldn't do it quick enough, because by the time that the block stun ended and you hit the button to parry, it would be too late. But he found early on that if you press forward at the same time you hit parry, you actually ended the animation early. And this is something I've noticed in a lot of games. And I don't think this is something that's actually programmed into the game. I think it's just inherent to the way things are programmed. And like I said, it transfers over. So once you get your mind into that sort of thought process, you approach games differently. And so when I play Dark Souls, I notice little things like this, and it just all kind of adds up. There are just so many little tricks in the game that you pick up. I mean, look at screen right now, what I'm doing. I'm switching back and forth between one-handed and two-handed, which is delaying the stamina bar from going down. Now, obviously, this is not purposely programmed into the game. It's just something that people figure out. I didn't figure that one out, but I saw someone else doing it, and I've done it ever since. If you guys watched my Assassin's Challenge run, you guys probably heard me talk about being able to roll while running. I kind of figured that one out on my own because I got tired of always being in a sprint and then trying to roll to dodge something and end up jumping, which would get me killed. So I played around with it and realized that as long as you're holding your shield up or your weapon in a block animation while running, you automatically dodge without even trying to jump. It just happens. So there's just so many little things like that. And again, the point that I'm getting to about people being good at video games and Dark Souls in general is because their mind works that way. They think about stuff like that. They don't just play the game and just kind of take everything for granted. They're always trying little things. They're always experimenting, and they see little openings like that. They see shortcuts. Just their mind just is always looking for something, and I think that's a key thing into becoming really good at video games. Some of the other tricks, since we're on the subject, someone mentioned in the comments about me doing the speedrunner trick about changing weapons in the air, and when you land you don't have the animation of being stunned and you can just take off running. Again, there's a lot of things in Dark Souls that revolve around changing weapons and how it kills animations. And so specifically the trick I'm talking about is what I used to do whenever I'd land from a jump is I would roll, because that was one way of killing the animation. Because if you fall really far and don't actually try to run after you land, you kind of stay there and there's a special animation of you being kind of stunned for a minute. And that can actually get you killed if you land next to an enemy. So rolling was the way I figured out early on in order to kill that animation and keep moving. But there is another way. And what you do basically is while you're falling, you switch weapons. And as soon as you land, you hit the button as if you're going to roll. But what happens instead is that you land and then you switch weapons immediately and automatically take off running. So there's really no delay. And again, I think it has something to do with switching weapons. There's something inherent about the switching weapon animation or the mechanic in the game that actually takes priority over other animations. And so there's all kinds of little neat tricks you can do with it. So now that I got my rambling out of the way, let's get back to the game. So I just summoned in Mildred and then kicked her back out just because I was pissed at her for killing me. I had some issues back in the Great Hollow, which you guys probably noticed. I decided to show all my goof ups because it was kind of a blooper reel for me. It's been a while since I've been to the Hollow and I was having trouble getting to the area where they spawn. I kept falling into the area. It would get me stuck on the branch, and one time you saw me fall and slide off about 4 different branches. So it was sort of an ordeal just to get there. But eventually I did get enough lizards in order to upgrade my Jagged Ghost Blade. And then you saw me sitting there and I fast forwarded it because I was trying to let the poison run out, and it left me with 7 hit points, so that I could be in hyper mode. And now you're realizing that stupid me forgot to put on the red tearstone ring. So here I am running around with 7 hit points and not getting any benefit from it. At some point here I will realize my mistake, and in the middle of the fight I will very carefully swap over to the red tearstone ring. I guess you could call that a little bit of extra artificial difficulty, because switching out items during a boss fight is not always a safe thing to do. I think about right here I realized, oh shit, I could have done twice as much damage as I did, but because I was an idiot and forgot to put it on, now I have to do it while dodging her. So you see me swap over real quick and somehow managed at the last second to dodge that attack, but now I'm ready to go. So as you guys are seeing, the Jagged Ghost Blade is actually a pretty good weapon. It's dealing out some pretty solid damage with her, and I don't have to worry about using pine resins. It's really quick. I like it because I can get a few swings in and still have enough stamina left for a dodge. So overall, it's a really good weapon. I think I could probably finish out the challenge with this weapon alone. But there, against other enemies, I think the Fire Reinforced Club +5 and ultimately +10 will definitely outdamage this thing. But for certain bosses, that, especially ones that bleed, this is a really solid weapon. So earlier I was talking about the mindset of gaming, and so when Dark Souls 2 comes out, obviously those of us that have played Dark Souls 1 are going to have a huge advantage, just as people that played Demon Souls had a huge advantage in Dark Souls. But in going in about how I'm going to be probably end up being really good at Dark Souls 2 with any luck, it's probably also going to be because of the way I approach it. I'm not the kind of person that worries about whether or not I beat the boss on the first try. In fact, if you guys knew how many times I died on my first playthrough, you'd probably be surprised. Oh, and by the way, slow motion there, just to show you how freaking close that was. I mean, that was literally inches from killing me. But anyway, and it's how I approach a lot of games. I don't go in there worried about whether I'm going to die or not. A lot of people will go and try really hard and get past that first boss and be all happy about it. I will willingly accept a couple deaths as long as I walk away with knowledge. Whereas somebody else might fight the first boss 3 or 4 times and eventually find a way to, you know, cheese the AI and come up with a win. I will purposely experiment. I will know for a fact that what I'm doing is going to get me killed. I'll try to parry. I'll try to dodge certain attacks because the only way to know if it's possible is to do it. And I'm not the kind of person that wants to wait for a YouTube video to show me that, so I'll be the one trying to be trailblazing that information. And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong or good about that. It's just that's how I approach things. So, like, the first time I fought ONS, God, it must have took me a couple hours. I probably spent an entire afternoon trying to kill them. But it wasn't because every single fight I was trying my hardest to win. I would say, okay, I see this attack. Can I dodge it? Can I block this? No, that doesn't work. So then I'll know. It's like every time. And that's kind of, I think that's how Dark Souls really is all about. It's not expected that you're going to play through Dark Souls and not die. Obviously, the entire tagline of prepare to die means you're going to die a lot. But the important part is that you learn from it. But it's funny because I approach all video games like this. I'm absolutely willing to accept a death as long as I walk away from it with some sort of newfound knowledge that I didn't have before. So as you saw, I finally wore down Quelaag. It took a while. You probably noticed that the music ended before the fight and were wondering how the hell that happened, and it was playing at normal speed while the slow motion happened. It's because nowadays when I make videos of Dark Souls, I turn the music off so that I can add any music I want if need be. So I just added Quelaag's song back on top of the fight, except it ran out and I decided not to bother trying to figure out a way to loop it or find an extended version. But anyway, Quelaag's down, the gargoyles are down, so now I do have access to Sin's Fortress. However, I do not like being in Demon Ruins in general. It's kind of like an area I'm not really that enamored with. So while I'm here, I am going to go down and try to take out Ceaseless Discharge, and then specifically I want to run down and get the large flame ember. So the last thing I wanted to do here was die on Ceaseless Discharge, because that would be slightly embarrassing, considering the fight is no different regardless of what new game iteration you're on. So going back to Dark Souls 2, you guys can absolutely expect me to make some videos of it. I will be trying to get it as early as possible. If it comes out in Japan first, then I will do what is required in order to play it. If it's a PS3 release, then I'm pretty sure that there's no region lock on a PS3, that I should be able to just play it on my system. And I will struggle through the Japanese menus if need be. If it comes out on a next-gen system and there's only a Japanese version, then I probably will even buy the Japanese version of the PS4 or whatever else system it comes out on first. Now, ultimately, I would like to play the PC version, but my guess is the PC version will not be the initial release. I really don't know what's going to happen with it. If for some reason they do a simultaneous release in different regions, then I'll just get whatever is the most convenient. But my guess is it will probably come out in Japan first, and I will do, again, what's required to play it early. So I did successfully make it back to the Fog Gate, and Ceaseless Discharge is down. I think he's going to give me about 50,000 souls, which means I'm going to have almost 150,000 souls to spend, which is probably more than I'll ever need. Assuming I don't ever lose my bloodstain, I should be okay in the soul department. So now I'm going to make it down into the Demon Ruins because I have one more goal to get, and that is the large flame ember. But I have a few enemies to take on first. So you're probably wondering, why didn't I use the bonfire at the Fair Lady, or why didn't I use the one at the beginning of the Demon Ruins? It's because I hate long runs, and I know that if I get the flame ember and warp back, then I still have to run through Blighttown to the bonfire. Now, obviously, if I die, then I still have to run anyway, but I always go into an area assuming that I probably won't die, but I very, very well can. It's just, I always do this in all my games. I don't like to use bonfires unless I have to, because I always like using homeward bones to their full extent. And that means going as far as you can without using a bonfire so that when you're done, you can save yourself a trip. So hopefully you guys weren't too bored by my long story about video games and why I think people can be good at them and all that. Some people like to hear me talk about stuff other than Dark Souls like that. Other people don't. And by the way, I just talked about dying, and you just saw that I did die. I zigged when I should have zagged. I dodged just a little bit too early. But I make it back here and get my bloodstain at least. But anyway, as I was saying, I could probably talk for hours upon hours about the video games and the golden age that I lived through and all kinds of good stuff. But not everyone wants to hear that kind of stuff. But if you guys do like it, I can talk about all kinds of good stuff. I could talk about the whole fighting game culture back in the golden age, what I consider the golden age, and just how much fun we had back then. Back before, we could play fighting games on the internet, so everything was always up close and in person. Me and my buddies had nicknames for almost everybody. Because even though there wasn't an online community, there was an actual real-life community. And a lot of the same people played Street Fighter across different arcades. So we would play people, like my local arcade that we played a lot of Street Fighter at was Scandia. It was like a miniature golf course, and they had a huge arcade. And they had originally just had a small Street Fighter cabinet, and then eventually they got one of the big screen setups with the joystick set far back from the screen, and it allowed a lot of people to stand around and watch. And on any given night, you could have 10 to 15 quarters up there. And so it was probably the funnest time I've ever had playing games, where if you were good at Street Fighter, which we all were, or my group of friends, you could sit there and play for an hour or more on the same quarter. And people would just constantly challenge you. And so all the smack talk you see on the internet didn't happen quite as much, because smack talk often turned into fisticuffs. I've seen a few in my time, and I've almost been involved in a few as well. It was just a great time to be playing video games, because the arcade scene was really huge back then, and there was just this huge community of people. And like I said, you could see the same person at different arcades, because they would travel around and play at different places. The local junior college had a Street Fighter cabinet. Some of the late night, like 7-Elevens, we used to go down back in the day, and our going out, and when we were 18 or 19, was cruising. And sometimes we'd stop at like a 7-Eleven or a Circle K at 2 in the morning, and there'd be a Street Fighter, and people would actually be playing it. And we used to I live in Northern Bay Area of California, and we used to actually travel to the city on the weekends. We would take a bus from Santa Rosa to the city, which is about an hour drive, and we would go hang out down on Market Street. There used to be this huge arcade, and they had probably 20 to 30 Street Fighters. They had a bunch of normal Street Fighter cabinets, but they also converted just about every single cabinet they had into Street Fighter. So it was like something I've never seen before. You literally have 30 Street Fighter cabinets, and all of them have people playing on it. And so that's another reason we got good. Instead of just playing locally and playing against the people that weren't as good as us, we would purposely go to areas where people were known to be really good. And that's kind of how you get good at fighting games and any other competitive game. You got to play against people that are better than you. And so that's what we did. And we would go there every single weekend for a long time. I even went so far as to travel down to Golfland in Southern California, and that's where a lot of known Street Fighter players were. Anyone who knows about Street Fighter probably knows who Alex Val is. I actually got to go down there and play against him, because I don't remember what I was doing. I think I went on a Disneyland trip with a girlfriend or something at the time, and while we were there, I was like, dude, we're here. I have to go to Southern Hills Golfland. And so it's just kind of like the way it was for me. I always had video games on the mind, and anytime I was in a new area, that's what first thing I would think about. Where's the Street Fighter cabinet? Where's the Tekken cabinet? I gotta go play some people from this area. So as you guys no doubt noticed, I finally got the Flame Ember. I gated, aka Homeward Boned, back to the bonfire, and I'm making one final trip in Blighttown to pick up Power Within. What I didn't talk about at the time, because I was too much talking about random stuff, was that when I was in Demon Ruins, you saw me go to the edge and throw a fireball down for apparently no reason. If you guys hadn't noticed, that was the Centipede Demon, and I was showing you that even though you can see him, you can't actually do anything to him until you go into his area. But that's where he starts. So anyway, I've done this run before in my Calamity Ring Challenge run. I did it a little bit differently. It was a little bit smoother this time, at least in the beginning. Last time I used the bow to knock some of those guys that blow fire off of the walkway before I got to them. This time I just kind of ran by them, and it worked actually better than the other method did. But again, this is pretty damn difficult because things do a lot of damage, and there's a lot of enemies in Blighttown. So I'm actually going to take the time to fight them, because I don't trust just running by them like I usually do, because if I get surrounded by them, I'm pretty much screwed. But this is going to be pretty much wrapping up the video. As soon as I get Power Within, then I'm going to get back to the bonfire, and that'll be the end. So now at this point, I'm going to have what I need pretty much. I have the large Flame Ember. I already have a +5 fire reinforced club. I'll have to get a hold of some red chunks, which I'll probably be doing at the beginning of the next video. And then I'll have my +10 fire weapon. I'll have my +5 jagged ghost blade. and I will probably be just heading right into Sin's Fortress and going from there. When I get to Anor Londo, I will have access to getting lightning weapons. I haven't decided if I'm going to actually get a lightning weapon or not. Lightning weapons against certain bosses are a little bit better than a +10 fire, but it may not be better enough for me to worry about. If I want to get lightning weapons and I have to go kill the Capra, I'm not sure if I really want to bother doing that. I don't think it'll be that hard, but I tend to get lazy sometimes, and I'm already told you guys I'm not going to be making too many of these videos, so I haven't decided yet. But once I get to Anor Londo, I will no doubt be taking on ONS and getting the Lord Vessel, and from that point, I'll have to decide how many of the final bosses I want to fight. I know for a fact I will fight the Four Kings because, as you guys already know, that's probably my favorite boss fight. I've fought him a ton, and if there's any boss that I think I can handle in any new game situation, it's definitely the Four Kings. As far as past that, I don't know. Some people have asked me to fight Nito. I probably won't bother with Nito. I don't really enjoy that fight that much. I probably won't bother fighting any of the other lords. Seath is a joke because once you know his AI, it's easily, you can mitigate all the difficulty and just take him out really easily. Bed of Chaos, there's no way in hell I'm going back down to Demon Ruins area. But anyway, as you're seeing, I took out a few of the guys. This weapon is really powerful. Even though I'm a New Game +7 and these guys have a ton of hit points, you can see I'm bleeding them out after 4 hits. So even though they have a ton of hit points, I'm still taking them down pretty quick. I just have to take this last guy out. I could have easily ran in front of him and picked up Power Within. Sometimes you can escape after that, sometimes he kills you. But I have so many souls, I didn't want to waste them, so I kind of went the long way. You notice I'm kind of nervous around this guy because I have had times where I've just went up and started attacking him and he does a move and still manages to hit me. So I'm kind of playing it safe since I got this far. I keep worrying about the other guys coming up behind me, but apparently they never decided to follow me that far. So this is pretty much going to be the end after I get to Power Within. Let me know what you guys thought about the commentary this time. I know a lot of you guys like me to talk about Dark Souls, but I've talked about it so much, I really am running out of things to say. So I've just been talking about other random things. If you guys like that, I can find some more random stuff to talk about. If you want me to talk more about Dark Souls, I'm getting too much off topic. I will try to come up with something. But either way, I got my Power Within. I'm going to get back, and I will see you guys next time.